Have you ever met someone who seems to have it all together, whose every action feels measured, every word carefully chosen, whose life appears flawless to the outside world? Maybe you felt that way yourself, as a child, as a teenager, as a quiet observer who learned early on that mistakes were dangerous, that love came with conditions, that approval had to be earned, and perfection was the ticket. Perhaps you grew up with a parent or teacher, a guardian or mentor, whose expectations were never quite satisfied, whose gaze seemed to measure your worth in quiet increments, and whose love felt like it depended on a flawless performance. And if you are honest with yourself, you know that somewhere inside you there is still that child, the one who had to be perfect. Imagine being 8 years old, holding a report card in your small hands, your stomach tied in knots, knowing that every grade, every comment, every small imperfection is a reflection not just of your effort, but of your worth. You hand it to your parent, your teacher, or someone whose opinion matters more than anything else, and you watch the reaction, the slightest frown, a small sigh, or even an absence of excitement, and you feel it. The weight of inadequacy, the invisible weight of needing to perform perfectly just to be loved, just to belong, just to be enough. That moment, as subtle as it might have been, plants the first seed of perfectionism. It whispers, "I must be flawless or I am not worthy." Perhaps you were a child who never forgot a mistake, who replayed errors in your mind for days, weeks, even years, analyzing every misstep, every poorly spoken word, every time your laughter was too loud or your curiosity was too inconvenient. You learned that your mistakes were magnified, not for teaching, not for learning, but as proof that you had failed. You became hyper-aware, constantly monitoring your behavior, striving to anticipate every expectation before it was spoken. And slowly you internalized the message: I must perform, I must succeed, I must never disappoint. Psychologists describe this as the perfectionistic child, the one who grows up under high expectations, whether explicit or implicit, and whose self-worth becomes intertwined with achievement. It is not merely ambition or discipline. It is a survival mechanism, a learned response to the subtle or overt pressures of conditional love. For this child, perfection is not a goal, it is armor, a shield against criticism, a way to secure approval and affection in a world that seems unpredictable and demanding. You may recognize it in yourself or in someone you love. The person who never forgets a mistake, who apologizes for the smallest misstep, who works tirelessly to maintain an image of competence and control. They may excel in school, sports, music, or any number of areas, but the drive is not simply about success. It is about safety, about belonging, about avoiding the sharp pangs of disapproval they learned to fear as children. And often it comes at a cost: anxiety, self-doubt, chronic stress, and an inability to allow themselves the grace of imperfection. Consider the subtle ways this manifests in daily life. Perhaps a child who had to be perfect learned to hide their emotions, fearing that tears, frustration, or anger would signal weakness. Maybe they became people pleasers, striving to meet not just explicit expectations, but the imagined desires of those around them. Perhaps they avoided risks, avoided creativity, or avoided vulnerability altogether, believing that mistakes were intolerable, that imperfection was dangerous. And in these patterns, they develop a quiet, relentless tension, a constant internal dialogue that measures, judges, and critiques. Psychologists call this self-critical perfectionism. It is the tendency to impose impossibly high standards upon oneself and to evaluate one's value based on performance rather than inherent worth. Research shows that children raised in environments that reward success but subtly punish failure are especially vulnerable. Over time, these children internalize the belief that love and acceptance are conditional, that mistakes are dangerous, and that achieving perfection is the only path to security. And even when they succeed, there is often a lingering fear. Will this ever be enough? The perfectionistic child often learns to be invisible in certain ways, to silence parts of themselves that might disrupt the carefully maintained image of flawlessness. Their curiosity may be tempered, their questions restrained, their spontaneity muted. They may develop an extraordinary sense of observation, learning to anticipate the moods, expectations, and desires of those around them, always calculating, always preparing, always performing. And while this brings a certain competence, it also comes with a subtle erosion of authentic self-expression. There is a particular kind of loneliness that accompanies perfectionism, a quiet isolation born not of social rejection, but of self-imposed standards. The child who had to be perfect may feel perpetually misunderstood, even by those who love them. They are never fully seen because what is visible is the performance, not the person beneath. Their accomplishments are noticed, but their fears, doubts, and desires are often overlooked. And over time, this can lead to emotional fatigue, imposter syndrome, and a deep, persistent anxiety that perfection will never be enough. Yet, within this struggle lies remarkable strength. The child who had to be perfect develops resilience, discipline, attention to detail, and the ability to navigate complex social and emotional landscapes. They are highly observant, capable of empathy, and attuned to the subtleties of human interaction. Their inner life is rich, nuanced, and deeply reflective, shaped by the constant negotiation between expectation and self-expression. And while perfectionism carries burdens, it also fosters skills and perspectives that few others develop with such intensity. But there is a hidden danger, the internalization of failure. For the perfectionistic child, mistakes are not just errors, they are evidence of inadequacy, signs that they are unworthy of love or recognition. This internal narrative can persist into adulthood, creating cycles of anxiety, procrastination, self-criticism, and overachievement. It can manifest as fear of failure, fear of judgment, or the relentless pursuit of standards that are ultimately impossible to maintain. And yet, awareness of this pattern is the first step toward healing. Therapists often describe the path toward recovery for the perfectionistic child as a journey of self-compassion. It involves learning to recognize and challenge internalized messages of inadequacy, to distinguish between performance and worth, and to embrace imperfection as a natural and valuable part of life. It involves reclaiming the right to make mistakes, to be human, to explore, to play, to fail, and to try again without fear of rejection. And most importantly, it involves acknowledging that love and acceptance are not conditional on flawlessness, but are inherent and available to all. Consider the parent or authority figure whose expectations shape this child. Perhaps they meant well. Perhaps they themselves were products of similar pressures. Perhaps their love was genuine, but communicated in ways that valued achievement over being, success over process, results over effort. And while this context explains the development of perfectionism, it does not erase its impact. The child learned a message that often persists, that love, safety, and approval are contingent, and that mistakes are dangerous. And unlearning this message is both challenging and transformative. There is a quiet beauty in understanding this psychology. When we see the perfectionistic child clearly, We recognize the courage it takes to survive under impossible standards. We understand that their diligence is not mere ambition, but a strategy for survival, a learned response to an unpredictable emotional environment. We see the tenderness beneath the armor, the fear behind the confidence, the longing for acceptance that is universal yet deeply personal. And in that recognition, there is empathy, compassion, and a path towards connection. The journey towards self-acceptance is gradual and requires patience. It begins with awareness, noticing the patterns, recognizing the inner critic, and acknowledging the fears that drive perfectionistic behavior. It continues with practice, allowing oneself to make mistakes, to experience failure without self-reproach, to explore creativity and curiosity without fear of judgment. And it deepens through reflection, understanding the origins of these patterns, forgiving the child who learned to perform to survive, and embracing the adult who is capable of change. In relationships, the perfectionistic child may struggle to trust fully, fearing that others will reject them for mistakes or imperfections. They may overextend themselves, seeking to please, to anticipate needs, to avoid conflict. They may struggle with vulnerability, believing that exposing weakness is dangerous. Yet with self-awareness, these patterns can be transformed. The perfectionistic child can learn that authenticity and honesty foster connection more than flawless performance ever could. They can learn that love, friendship, and acceptance do not require perfection. They require presence, empathy, and the courage to be seen as they truly are. And there is liberation in this understanding. The child who had to be perfect can reclaim play, joy, and creativity. They can embrace spontaneity, risk, and the messiness of life without fear. They can experience self-compassion, the recognition that worth is inherent, and that being human is more than enough. They can begin to see mistakes not as evidence of failure, but as opportunities for growth, learning, and connection. Perhaps the most profound realization is that perfectionism is not a reflection of inadequacy. It is a reflection of adaptation. It is a survival strategy developed in response to expectations, pressures, and the environment in which a child grows. And when understood in this way, it can be approached with empathy, both toward the child who once struggled and the adult who continues to navigate these patterns. Ultimately, the psychology of the child who had to be perfect is a story of resilience, survival, and transformation. It is a testament to the human capacity to adapt, to endure, and to seek love and acceptance in a world that sometimes communicates conditions rather than assurance. It is also a call to embrace imperfection, to cultivate self-compassion, and to recognize that worth is inherent, not earned. So if you find yourself identifying with this child, know that you are not alone. You carry within you a remarkable combination of sensitivity, awareness, and perseverance. And while the path toward freedom from perfectionism requires courage, patience, and self-reflection, it is possible. You can learn to embrace mistakes, to nurture authenticity, to love yourself fully, and to recognize that imperfection is not a flaw, but a vital, beautiful part of being human. And perhaps, just perhaps, the child who had to be perfect can finally rest, knowing that they are enough, not because of what they do, but because of who they are. That perfection is not required for love, that mistakes do not diminish worth, that being human is not only acceptable, it is extraordinary. And in that acceptance, in that understanding, in that quiet recognition of self, the child who once had to be perfect becomes whole. They carry within them not just the lessons of survival, but the gifts of empathy, insight, and resilience. They carry the capacity to love themselves fully, to live authentically, and to navigate life with courage and compassion. And perhaps that is the most profound truth of all. The child who had to be perfect is not lost. They are alive within you, waiting to be seen, honored, and freed. And in embracing that child, you finally learn the true meaning of acceptance, love, and the beauty of being human.